Okay, I guess you can hear me. I'm going to do something a little different. I've had quite an extensive involvement in the counterculture for many, many years. I'm going to try to take a little slice of that, a little piece of like a window into that movement. And I'm going to do it by talking about a young person who I traveled with named Little Patty. And so I'm going to, and also I want to preface that I know we have romanticized that period. In some ways it could have been glorious, but some ways there was a lot of tragedy. I've seen a lot of crash and burn. I've seen a lot of things that weren't really nothing to write about. So anyway, I first met Little Patty. I just got back from New York, and I didn't fly. I hitchhiked, and I got back. I had no money. All this time that I'm talking about, I never had money. I didn't work. I don't know how I ate. I don't remember the clothes I wore. And I just traveled from commune to commune across the country. And I arrived back in San Francisco, and I found my commune. They had moved, and I didn't think I'd ever find them because there was no cell phones or anything. I didn't know where they went. The house that they were in was a big hole in the ground. But I found them on North Beach, where City Lights bookstore was, and there was coffee houses and jazz places, and a place where we all hung out. So in this commune on O'Farrell Street, Fillmore and O'Farrell, near the Panhandle and also near what was to become Haight-Ashbury. We were living there. There was a whole bunch of us in this house. It was really a house where we experimented with life. It was a house where clothes were extraordinarily optional. And it was a house that we just did what we felt like. So one day, about a week after Christmas, we saw all these Christmas trees on the street, and we started gathering them up. And we had a big room in the house that we filled with Christmas trees. And we called that our forest room. And we made little dens underneath the trees, and it was a place where I slept all the time in a little mattress under these trees. One day, this person came in the middle of the night and crawled in bed with me, and actually sort of curled up on my chest. And that was Little Patty, and that's how I met her. And she was a little waif of a person. We guessed her age at being 15. Nobody knew her. Nobody knew where she came from. She just appeared. And that was Little Patty, a little straight red hair and a tiny button nose, and had a funny sense of humor about life. So one day, there was four of us, Little Patty, a person named Dennis and Chris, and I decided to go to New York. And so back to New York we went. We stood out on the highway and we hitchhiked. And Dennis was, we made it to Stockton, and Dennis was the one who showed us how to catch a freight train. And so we were hiding behind the tracks because we didn't want the yard bulls to see us. And there was it was like a flatbed car. It really was a car carrier, but they were open in those days, not closed up right now. And this, so we waited there by it, and Dennis found out where the train was going. And so when the train got ready to move, there was a mattress that we threw up on it, and we all jumped and climbed up on it, and we sat on this mattress, and we went from Stockton, California, all the way to LA, sitting out in the open. And it was so much fun to go by all of these railroad gates that would go down, clang, 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 and the cars would be waiting, and we'd wave at them, and we just had, it was a wonderful time. And then somehow from there, we ended up in Austin, Texas, and I actually have these blanks where I don't remember how we went from one place to another. It just, these are my memories. And so in Austin, Texas, I got a job with some other people to help repaint somebody's living room. This really, a kind of a straight couple. I think they were professors because the University of Texas was there. And we were painting away, then pretty soon people came over, then more people came over, and then the Hells Angels came over, and there was probably 20 or 30 people in the living room. And then pretty soon a gun went off and it went through the ceiling. And next thing I remember is Dennis, Chris, and I and little Patty were in the Austin County Jail. And it's not my first time. I had been thrown in jail many times for vagrancy. Long hair and a beard always does it, especially in the South. So anyway, I could sit up on the top bunk and I could reach through the bars, and little Patty sat up on the top bunk in her cell and reached through the bars, and we could hold hands. And it sort of got us through that period, and then we got released, and I'm not sure how we did, and I don't even remember why we were in there. But when we got out of jail and we were hitchhiking to Chicago, little Patty quit talking, and she started just buzzing. She would just articulate like this and go biz 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 biz, and even in the store she'd go biz 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 to buy something, and then I started doing it, and so the two of us just were hitchhiking. It took us a couple weeks to get to Chicago, and we just buzzed the whole time. And Dennis was a little kind of, it drove him crazy because Dennis couldn't get into it. Dennis was he was quite a mathematician. And actually, Dennis was the first person to write minimalist music, and he's credited with that. He's also credited with the Mars landings. So that's where Dennis was at, very in his head. And so anyway, Dennis couldn't get into it. But eventually we found a place in Chicago, in South Chicago, the only white apartment building in South Chicago. So there we were, and Dennis started buzzing. And so all three of us were buzzing now. And Dennis was somewhat well known because people kept coming by, but Dennis would answer the door and start leaping around, buzzing like crazy. And they would slam the door and run. And in this apartment, all there was, the only furniture was like a hospital gurney. And so we would take turns lying on it and pretending we were dead. And it was 2 weeks we were there. We went mad. I think we actually decided to enter into a state of madness. Like little Patty opened the refrigerator and just dumped everything out on the floor, and we just stood and looked at it, and then we buzzed. And we just let ourselves go as an experiment to see where we'd go. And then we made it to New York. The last I remember is in New York. Little Patty and I were living on the streets, surviving through survival sex. It was cold, it was winter. We found a place in the basement where these two guys, a person named Carl and a big guy with curly hair, and we serviced them to have a place to stay. We ended up, we ended up moving with somebody, but that was another strange place, and it got really heavy. So in the middle of the night, I fled south, and I never saw little Patty again, but she's always in my heart. And I'm going to read a short poem. It kind of describes what was going on, and there was a lot of anger in those days, and there was a lot of just struggles. And so here it is. And it's about that time in my life, this is about. It says, hey, can I take your picture? I suppose it comes from the anger, deep, rolling, visceral anger. I spent time in the trenches. I lived such freedom that the other world and those that inhabit it feel like unattainable aliens. Bathing in the fountain in Washington Square, panhandling on Bleecker Street, giving blowjobs out of defiance. Hey, can I take your picture? You got any spare change? Skin popping at St. Mark's Place, seeing the hard-ons grow with a smack. I flee into the night, cars, noise, trucks, noise, Garden State Parkway south. My thumb in the nighttime snow, survival is south. Do you want a picture now?